Capital punishment, known in America as the death penalty, is the punishment for people who commit some of the most heinous crimes. The question is, do we always get it right? Has there been innocent people that have suffered the fate of the death penalty who did not deserve it? Are you for or against it, and why? Join me as I examine the death penalty in the United States on this episode of True Crime and Authors.
Welcome to True Crime and Authors Podcast, where we bring two passions together. The show that gives new meaning to the old adage, truth is stranger than fiction. Here's your host, David McClam.
Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome to another episode of True Crime and Authors. Of course, I'm your man, David McClam. Hey, if you haven't already, make sure that you follow us on all of our social media. One link to a link tree will get you to every site you need to follow the show. All right, guys, so here we are at the beginning of 2023. I hope all of you guys had a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and even better now, a Happy New Year. A lot of things going to be coming down here at True Crime and Authors with some new authors that have signed up to be interviewed. You're going to be hearing all about them going on further in the year, as long as some of the other many fabulous authors yet to be released. So I hope you are ready for a good 2023. Over the holiday, we did pick up a new sponsor. I am working on their sponsor page right now, but the show's second sponsor now is going to be Deep Dark Secrets, hosted by LaDonna, Humphrey, and Alecia, Lockhart. You have heard them here before. They've talked about their books, The Girl I Never Knew Who Killed Melissa Wett, and the second part of that, Strangled, which is co-authored by Alecia Lockhart. So be sure to check out their sponsorship page. It will be up and running here before you know it. Make sure you go over to the Deep Dark Secrets podcast, give them a listen, go buy their books. Let's help them do what they're trying to do, which is eradicate the death fantasy community, as well as protecting our daughters out there and trying to find who indeed did kill Melissa Wett. All right, so today's case is going to be a controversial one. This is probably one of the most controversial ones I'm going to bring. There's another one I want to do about prison reform that I've been asked to do, so I'm sure that will be controversial as well. But we're going to talk about the death penalty, known to us in America as capital punishment. And then I'll tell you at the end why I am against capital punishment. I've been asked this question many a times, and I decided since I was going to do an episode on it, I would tell you guys here at the end. I've also come to find out that a lot of people in different countries either doesn't know what capital punishment is here in America or have never heard of it before, and by the different ways in which it can be done. So I kind of want to just do an episode on capital punishment. I'm not here to change your opinion of it, if you are for it or against it. I'm not here to judge anybody. Let's just talk about capital punishment in America. Do we need to reform it? Do we need to get rid of it? Is there a lot of people that are dying that are innocent? I think it may be shocking to you to find out. So let's start with what capital punishment is. Of course, it is also known as the death penalty. It is the state-sanctioned practice of deliberately killing a person as a punishment for an actual or supposed crime, usually following an authorized rule-governed process to conclude that the person is responsible for violating norms that warrant said punishment. The sentence ordering that an offender is to be punished in such a manner is known as death sentence, and the act of carrying out the sentence is known as an execution. A prisoner who has been sentenced to death and awaits execution is condemned and is commonly referred to as being on death row. Crimes that are punishable by death are known as capital crimes, capital offenses, or capital felonies, and vary depending on the jurisdiction, but commonly include serious crimes against a person, such as murder, mass murder, aggravated cases of rape, often including child sexual abuse, terrorism, aircraft hijacking, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide, along with crimes against the state, such as attempting to overthrow government, treason, espionage, sedition, and piracy, among other crimes. Also, in some cases, acts of recidivism, aggravated robbery, and kidnapping, in addition to drug trafficking, drug dealing, and drug possession, are capital crimes or enhancements. However, states have also imposed punitive executions for an expansive range of conduct for political or religious beliefs and practices, for a status beyond one's control, or without employing any significant due process procedures. Judicial murder is the intentional and premeditated killing of an innocent person by means of capital punishment. For example, the executions following the show trials in Russia during the Great Purge of 1937 to 1938 were an instrument of political repression. But executions are carried out by many methods, including hanging, shooting, lethal injection, stoning, electrocution, and gassing. Just if you look at that, many of these forms we've had in the United States, some of them way back in like the 1920s and so on, when they came with the hanging. Shooting is usually by firing squad. Lethal injection is the most common way in which it is done now. Stoning usually happens, I think, more in the Middle Eastern type countries. Electrocution, we've done that. That's the electric chair. And gassing, where they actually put you in the gas chamber, which we've had that manner here too as well. They put you in a chamber that's filled with gas that is derived to kill you. Now, the thing is, a lot of these methods went away because they felt that they were inhumane or that it caused a great deal of pain. Like, for instance, hanging is supposed to be quick. So when they get you out there, they drop that lever, they hang you. It's supposed to choke you till you're dead. It's supposed to be quick. But there has been many hangings in history that was botched, where the person did not die right away, or they didn't die at all. And they excuse the people. They found the guy is still there, so they break their necks. Shooting, though, I think the firing squad, that was always 100%, because you had so many people that was lined up. I don't know how many. I want to say 10, 20, maybe 30 people. They all have guns. The thing is whoever fired that fatal shot, they never know, because they're all firing at one time. So the person gets hit. They don't know who killed the person. Lethal injection is commonly the used now. They strap you down to a gurney, and I think they inject 3 drugs into you that is meant for you to go out peacefully. Okay, so I think one slows your breathing, one stops your heart, and then one finally puts you out. We've never done stoning in America that I know of. Electrocution, the electric chair. I won't go through the whole history, but I will post this for you guys to read it. But the electric chair went out years ago because of the fact that it was dubbed inhumane. There's been so many botched ones and with the electric chair where people's eyeballs has fallen out. People was burned to death. They didn't have enough water in the sponge. You know, way back when they used a sponge and they put it, they had a helmet over your head where they screwed the nut down because it was metal, and that was supposed to be the induction for the electricity. They, many of those went bad. One person, I think, even caught on fire, and you have everybody that's looking at that. So got rid of that. As of 2022, 55 countries retain capital punishment. 109 countries have completely abolished it de jure for all crimes. 7 have abolished it for ordinary crimes, while maintaining it for special circumstances, such as war crimes, and 24 are abolitionists in practice. Although the majority of nations have abolished capital punishment, over 60% of the world's population live in countries where the death penalty is retained, such as China, India, the United States, Singapore, Indonesia, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nigeria, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Japan, and Taiwan. Capital punishment is controversial in several countries and states, and positions can vary within a single political ideology for culture or region. Amnesty International declares that the death penalty breaches human rights, stating the right to life and the right to live free from torture or cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. These rights are protected under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, adopted by the United Nations in 1948. In the European Union, Article 2 of the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union prohibits the use of capital punishment. The Council of Europe, which has 46 member states, has sought to abolish the use of the death penalty by its members absolutely through Protocol 13 of the European Convention on Human Rights. However, this only affects those member states which have signed and ratified it, and they do not include Armenia and Azerbaijan. The United Nations General Assembly has adopted throughout the years from 2007 to 2020 8 non-binding resolutions calling for a global moratorium on executions with a view to eventual abolition. Now, let's not forget that some countries has such a stance against the death penalty that it even affects people who are from the country that lives here. Like, for instance, Arnold Schwarzenegger, former governor of California, is from Austria. It came up for Stan Tookie Williams to be executed, and there was a thing going around asking him to pardon Stan Tookie Williams. He did not. So Austria, because of the fact that he was backing the death penalty, wanted nothing to do with Arnold Schwarzenegger anymore, to the point to where they went out and they removed his statue that they had of him when he won Mr. Olympia years ago, and they pretty much denounced him. All right, so I won't go through the whole entire history. It is a long history when it comes to the death penalty, but I will give you just a little bit of it. Because, I mean, if you guys really wanted to dig into it, I'll be here all night. It goes back through, ancient Greece, ancient history, ancient Rome. So the death penalty has been around for a while. But I'll give you this piece of it. Execution of criminals and decedents has been used by nearly all societies since the beginning of civilizations on Earth. Until the 19th century, without developed prison systems, there was frequently no workable alternative to ensure deterrence and incapacitation of criminals. In pre-modern times, the executions themselves often involve torture with cruel and painful methods, such as the breaking wheel, keel hauling, sawing, hanging, drawing, and quartering, burning at the stake, flaying, slow slicing, boiling alive, impalement, mazzatello, blowing from a gun, and scaphism. Other methods which appear only in legend include the blood eagle and brazen bull. The use of formal execution extends to the beginning of recorded history. Most historical records and various primitive tribal practices indicate that the death penalty was a part of their justice system. Communal punishments for wrongdoing generally included blood money, compensation by the wrongdoer, corporal punishment, shunning, banishment, and execution. In tribal societies, compensation and shunning were often considered enough as a form of justice. The response to crimes committed by neighboring tribes, clans, or communities included a formal apology, compensation, blood feuds, and tribal warfare. So a blood feud or vendetta occurs when arbitration between families or tribes fails or an arbitration system is non-existent. This form of justice was common before the emergence of an arbitration system based on state or organized religion. It may result from crime and disputes or a code of honor. Acts of retaliation underscore the ability of the social collective to defend itself and demonstrate to enemies, as well as potential allies, that injury to property, rights, or the person will not go unpunished. In most countries that practice capital punishment, it is now reserved for murder, terrorism, war crimes, espionage, treason, or as part of military justice. In some countries, sexual crimes such as rape, fornication, adultery, incest, sodomy, and bestiality carry the death penalty, as do religious crimes such as blasphemy. In many countries that use the death penalty, drug trafficking and often drug possession is also a capital offense. In China, human trafficking and serious cases of corruption and financial crimes are punished by the death penalty. In militaries around the world, courts martial have imposed death sentences for offenses such as cowardice, desertion, insubordination, and immunity. So those are all the things in which you can be killed for in the death penalty. Now, for a lot of people that do support the death penalty, they'll say, okay, these are good crimes. Now, if you're out there listening and you created like an adultery, you may say, hey, that ain't worth killing me over, or something that's even lower form than that, money laundering, things of that nature. But this was the history. Back then, you could actually be put to death for more things than we can now here, at least in the U.S. Now, some of these crimes, in their heinous of natures, which is why the death penalty was brought back, and a lot of people still to this day will support that. Those crimes is, of course, sexual crimes, such as rape, especially against a child. People will say instantly, just let's kill this person. But when you look at some of the other crimes that can be questionable, now these are crimes that you don't have DNA to prove, or there is no baby to prove that you did this thing or whatever. Sometimes I do think that it is gotten wrong. So what I mean by that is now, you can, back here, of course, you can go to jail for drug trafficking, drug dealing, drug possession, kidnapping, some cases, robbery, hijacking, things of that nature. So what if you are just a person that was there and you just get caught up in this thing with a drug dealer? And that person goes down, you can go down with them, and they have no way of proving at that point because you're guilty by association. So some people has actually fought to keep the death penalty. And let me give you some of the good reasons why that is. I do believe that there are some crimes, even myself, and I'm against it, that I say, if there is ever a death penalty case, this is it. When you read about what happens to a child, or you read about an innocent person, male or female, that's just getting killed for no apparent reason, or somebody hijacks a plane and kills 400 people, or you find out somebody's been getting abused their whole entire life, or somebody just randomly walks into a house and just shoots people and kills them all up, you're looking like that person no longer deserves to be here, and they should pay for their lives. And in a lot of cases, just being human, yeah, that's the feeling. And they'll tell you this is why capital punishment was put in place. But now you got to ask yourself, what about the times when capital punishment has gotten it wrong? This is where it comes into the play of, do you support capital punishment? If so, why that is? How many times can we say that we've gotten this right? Is there people that we wrongfully executed? So you have to look into that as well. Now, a lot of people will say, no, everybody say they're innocent, but they're not. So what if I was to tell you that right now I'm looking at 20 cases from an execution year of 1989 to 2020, that they say now that these people are gone, that there are strong evidence of the innocence of these people. And I don't know all these names, but there's a couple here that I do know. So I'll just give you two. One that happened in 2019 was Larry Swearingen. Now they're coming back saying that they believe that Larry Swearingen, that there's strong enough evidence to prove that, hey, he may have been innocent. They said that in his case, there was significant flaws with virtually every piece of forensic evidence in his case, and that there was strong evidence that it was physically impossible for him to have committed the crime. But his conviction was grounded in what his lawyers described as false and misleading junk science. So if you don't know anything about the Larry Swearingen case, he was sentenced to death in July of 2000 for the murder of Melissa Trotter, who was strangled with a pair of pantyhose and whose body was later dumped in a state forest. A county medical examiner testified at trial that Trotter had been dead nearly a month at the time her body was discovered, and she later recanted that testimony, saying Trotter died no more than 2 weeks before. 8 other experts, including forensic pathologists, forensic entomologists, and forensic anthropologists, agreed with that assessment. However, given that time of death, it was impossible for Swearingen to have committed the murder. 3 days after Trotter's disappearance, Swearingen was arrested for outstanding traffic warrants and was still in jail 3 weeks later when Trotter's body was discovered. That is a missed case. Now that he's dead, can't bring him back. 2019, they're saying, hey, sorry, we're kind of found out the evidence that, Swearingen probably didn't do this. but it's too late. As of 2020, Nathaniel Woods, now they're coming back saying that they think that Nathaniel Woods may have been innocent. Don't know about his case. He was sentenced to death after a non-unanimous jury sentencing recommendation in August of 2005 for the killings of 3 Alabama police officers. His case featured several hallmarks of wrongful conviction, official misconduct, coerced informant testimony, and racial discrimination. But he's already gone and they're saying, hey, we have evidence that, hey, this may not have been right. It was an ununanimous. Now, that leads me to the other reason why people want to abolish the death penalty, because of race. Nathaniel Woods is black. They do feel, of a lot of things I've read and researched, even some of the white people that's research that I've read about says they think that people of color and indigenous people are targeted for the death penalty. When's the last time you heard somebody get the death penalty in a non-unanimous jury? I've said on several juries, the number one instruction that they give us is your verdict must be unanimous. At the time that we are not unanimous and we can't come to that, they declare a mistrial and the trial can be tried again. Again, he was convicted and sent to death in a non-unanimous jury. Now let's talk about some people that, let's say, would deserve death row. That's never even seen it. Let's talk about the Ted Kaczynskis of the world. Let's talk about the Jeffrey Dahmers of the world. These guys were sentenced to life. They committed some of the most heinous crimes. Jeffrey Dahmer out here killing young boys and cooking them up in pots. You got Ted Kaczynski sending bombs and killing people. He's still alive. He's sitting in life in prison right now. So either that state didn't support the death penalty at the time, or there was a miss somewhere. Why was he not put on death row when it is proven of the murders that he committed and the lives that he destroyed? And Jeffrey Dahmer, when it was proven of the people that he murdered and the evidence that he was a cannibal. Now, y'all may say that Jeffrey got what he deserved in the end anyways, because really, if you really look at it, in any state, in any country, I believe, if you go to jail for certain things, it's an automatic death sentence. Here in America, if you go to jail for anything pertaining to a child, pertaining to the beating of women, you most likely ain't gonna make it out of jail. So they can give you 1 year and somebody is probably gonna go ahead and take you out anyways. But in the case of someone like a Ted Kaczynski, yeah, I don't know how many kids have been there, but I'm sure he killed a few kids in there too, but he's sitting in jail for life, not death row. So that's the one problem I have with the death penalty is some of the most notorious people of all time that should be sitting on death row for the heinous crimes they committed never sees death row. And don't tell me that you can't figure this stuff out. In our judicial system, we've seen politicians and judges and prosecutors move things around just so they can get what they want. Some of these guys are serial killers. If you kill somebody in the jurisdiction that supports the death penalty, why not try him down there? Don't tell me you got to try him because where his last case might have been in Minnesota where they don't support the death penalty, but we got 12 other states he was in. Well, why can't you finagle your magic and move him down to a place where their death penalty is available and put him on death row? If the death penalty is going to be fair, and we now in America usually only give the death penalty for the most heinous of crimes, then all these cats should be sitting on death row right now. A lot of them, at this point, already executed. Now, it does appear that in 2021, we kind of took a back seat. It used to be that America used to be one of the top countries to carry out executions. Well, it looks like in 2020, we only carried out 11, or in 2021, I'm sorry, we only carried out 11 executions. Well, let me kind of tell you why I believe that. The pandemic happened in 2020. If you were looking around, looking at the news when it came to capital punishment, it was all over everywhere. They were running out of drugs. They did not have the drugs to do a lethal injection, to the point to where they started looking at other ways to do it. There was some documentary I watched where a guy was going to volunteer for this new way. I can't remember what it was. They was going to come up with to execute people if they can no longer get any of the lethal injection drugs. So down here, at least, the death penalty was kind of put on hold. That's why only 11 in 2021. I'm sure they have a backlog since 2020. That's the case for and kind of against the death penalty. The death penalty has to be fair. And if you're going to put people on death row for all these things, if you're going to put, Nathaniel up on there, if you're going to put Larry Swearingen, and even though their crimes is bad, I'm not saying that they're not, but they're not quite as heinous as some of the other people I've mentioned, then we need to put everybody up on the row. So let me tell you why I am against the death penalty. I have been asked several times why I'm against the death penalty. A lot of my friends are not religious. They jump right to because I'm a Christian, and that's the main reason why that it is. I'm very outspoken about it. I've told everybody I don't know how people can be Christians and support the death penalty because it is everything that we as Christians do believe this is true. So I'll tell you why I disagree with the death penalty. Let's just get the elephant out the room. One reason is because of my religion. Now, what I would like to say first, I ain't going to preach a sermon, but there are verses in the Bible that people do what I call reading what they want to read and not reading the rest. So the number one verse that's always used that people say that God supports the death penalty regardless of what we read when he says, thou shalt not kill. I mean, he didn't put no limitation. He didn't say unless it's the state. He just said, thou shalt not kill. He also said, you should not take what you cannot give. They always pull this one out. Matthew 5:38. You have heard that it was said, eye for eye and tooth for tooth. Now, if you go and ask most people that use that, say, can you give me the second part of that verse? They look at you like you dumb and they tell you, nope, that's the whole verse. But it is not. Because there's Matthew 5, verse 39 that continues that. He says, but I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. He just clarified that. So what he's basically telling you is, no, you should not kill this person. Then they use vengeance is mine. Okay, but it says vengeance is mine, said the Lord. So there are several different verses throughout the Bible, especially in the New Testament, that talks about thou shalt not kill, that murder of any type is wrong, and so on and so forth. Now, religion aside, though, see, I'm not one of those people that just say, I don't agree because I'm a Christian and this is what thus said the Lord and that's it. No, you also have to throw a little bit of common sense into this equation as well. And that's what I'm here to do with you guys today, is throwing a little bit of common sense. I just gave you a little bit of that. Even if I was not a Christian, I would be against the death penalty because it is not 100% accurate. You are killing people sometimes that you do not know if they really committed this crime. And because there is so much riding on politics that nobody wants to come back and say I was wrong, because the prosecution has this list of I got to win all these cases to keep my job. It has been shown that even if they know for a fact they have evidence to exonerate somebody from the death penalty or from jail, period, they won't do it because it puts a black mark on their political career. So looking it up, here's what I found. It says from the Death Penalty Information Center, they said there is no way to tell how many of the 1,558 people executed since 1976 may also have been innocent, because courts do not generally entertain claims of innocence when the defendant is dead. Defense attorneys move on to other cases where clients' lives can still be saved. So what they're telling you is, once they kill him, that's it. They don't care if the person was in it or not because he's paid for the crime and that's it. The only way you ever find out these people was killed unjustly is because somebody shows up and says you just killed the wrong person. Somebody's family is hell-bent on clearing that person's name and suing the heck out the government. These are the only two reasons you find out that these people may be innocent. But look at the two cases I just gave you. That's only 2 of the 20 on this list. And I just gave you the main one, Nathaniel Woods, ununanimous. The other reason I'm against the death penalty is, sadly, because of race. I have seen evidence that, yes, black people go to the death chamber more than their counterparts, indigenous people as well. It is worse in some states than the other. And I'm not going to say all those people are innocent, but when we can remove race from everything, when we're just looking at the person for the person that did the crime, not caring what color they are, but caring about the human side of that, which is, sir, ma'am, you committed a crime against humanity. You have done something heinous. We don't really care what color you are, what gender you are. This is the sentence you deserve, and this is what we gonna carry out. But we ain't there yet. It has been proven that more black and brown people and indigenous people has been at least sentenced to death, even if it has not been carried out, but they're still waiting. So yes, sadly, race, to be fair to all people, does come in. We all, now I don't care what color we are, me, you, the green man across the street, if we all go and commit a crime, we should be held to that sentence, whether it's death or not, the same as anybody else, regardless of color, regardless of stature, regardless of how much money we make. You should be one in the same when you have to face justice. The other one that I always hear is, well, why are we going to spend all this money to keep them in jail? So I ask you this question. What is the average time between somebody getting sentenced to death and the death sentence being carried out? Now, I don't know about any other country. In America, at this point, it's going on at least 20 years because we have a system of appeals. And the law says that that person has to go through every and each appeal unless they decline that, no matter how long that takes. And if you're looking at the way the court system runs now, well, you're already in jail. They don't got no rush, no time to rush for you. So, your one appeal hearing could be in 6 months. The next one could be in 2 years. The next one could be in 3 years. And so it takes you that long to run the whole gamut of appeals. There has been a couple of people who were innocent or just did the crime. I think the couple I've seen, they actually were guilty of the crime. They just said, hey, man, look, can I just go to death row today? But they would say, my attorneys make me do all these appeals because this is more treacherous than just going ahead and dying. So there's some people that just waives all their appeals and says, let's just get this over with. Now, barring all of that, here's what I want to appeal to you guys who do believe in the death penalty. I've talked to a number of my friends who supports it. I've talked to my wife to get her opinion, and it's all been the same. And I says, why is it that you agree with the death penalty? Here's the number one answer I always get. Because that person went out and took somebody else's life, and they took that life violently, and they deserve to die. All right, well, I get that to you. But let me appeal to you with this one. Does that person that's on death row, that's gonna die, does that person die in the same manner and rate of the person that he or she is there for? If your loved one got stabbed viciously 27 times and felt pain and was in agony and had the most horrific death ever, is that what the person that committed the crime that's going to the death chamber gonna face? If somebody burned somebody to death and they looked at them and laughed and smoked a cigarette over their body while they were burning and just watched them wreath in pain, is that going to be the same pain that that person marching into the death chamber going to feel? If somebody kills somebody by shooting them 30 times and then they drug them up, put them in a chair, chain them back and slit their throat to watch them die, is that the same thing the person in the death chamber is going to feel? The answer is no. What did you gain? that person is going to be put in a euphoric state and is going to drift away just like he or she would in natural causes without having any bodily diseases that causes pain. That person is going to suffer the most unviolent death of all time. Not going to feel anything. Not going to feel what your loved one felt if you're somebody listening to this who has somebody who was killed. And if you have, I'm sorry. I really am sorry for your loss, but they're not going to feel that. They're never going to know what it was like to die the way that they took that person's life. Even though Georgia is one of the most racist states, I'm from there. My grandmother was killed in 1978 by a driver that was flying down the street, threw her 30 feet in the air, drug her 70 feet more on the ground. Now, very racist back then. But they came to my mom and said, hey, if you have the opportunity, but you want to put him to death? And my mom said, no, because nobody can whip you like God can. I am a firm believer in that. Even though I was only a few years old, my mom's always told me the story that man came by the Winn-Dixie store where she worked every single day just to wave and say hi, see how sorry he was, and then also would drop off flowers. Came and dropped off flowers at my grandmother's funeral because he was so guilt-ridden about what he had done that he couldn't stand himself. I feel for these people that's committed these most heinous of crimes. That's my answer. Nobody can whip you like God can. You got to sit in a jail cell and you got to think about what it is that you did. I understand that some of you see some of these criminals and they sit up in court and they got their big game face on. They look like nothing phases them and they just ready for the world. But I promise you, in their deepest, darkest times, when they're sitting in that cell by themselves and all they got is darkness around them, the heinous crimes that they have committed comes back to them and they see it in vivid color and they see it in vivid detail. And sometimes that is enough to drive them to just want to die. There has been a few serial killers that has come back and said, hey man, every day I see my victims. Every day I'm haunted. Every day I turn around. Something reminds me of what I've done. That is one of my biggest, besides the fact that, the innocent people that's dying, my biggest reason I'm against the death penalty is that one. Because that person is never going to suffer like your loved one did. Now, I know you heard me way back earlier, some of those methods that they use. Okay, I don't know. Maybe they brought those back. I don't know. They flailing people and burning people and things of that nature. They made sure that the death was very horrific if you're on death row. Okay, right? Blowing from a gun, all that kind of stuff. That ain't how it is now. The perpetrator that has done the crime gets away with it. But you have to ask yourself this question too. And I know a lot of people out there that's for the death penalty, especially those that's been affected by somebody who has committed the crime. They always, when you see the press conference at the end, the number one thing the journalists ask is, how do y'all feel now that so-and-so has been executed? And one of the most truest answers I ever heard was, this man said, I don't really know how to feel. I thought that I would feel good about it, but now I don't know how to feel. Because the person that was executed also has a family. And you also took them from that family. And I know a lot of people don't care because you took somebody else away from their family too. I get it. But when you look at the human side of things, you have to come to the realization of this. No matter what happens, no matter if you electrocute the person, bring it back to life and re-electrocute them again, or lethal injection, however you're going to do it, the person that they took from you is never going to come back. So then the question becomes, what did capital punishment solve? When you go to jail, it solves something. So if somebody goes to jail for drug trafficking, you've taken that person off the block. It solves that crime, at least for that time, until somebody else decides to pick that up. If you have a child that's getting messed with by an adult and you take that person and put them in jail, you solved that because that person is no longer available to do whatever that they was doing to this child is solved. You still have that child in your life. That child is able to live as normal life as he or she can. You're able to hug that child. You have a tangible thing there. But when somebody is dead and you kill somebody on death row, the person is never going to come back. So then the question becomes is, what was it for? What did it gain? Maybe I'll be for it if, somewhere it said, hey, if you decide to give your life up, we can bring back the person that you took out of here. I'll be all for it. All right, cool. You took their life. You got to give yours. We bring this person back. Let's do that. But that's not what's going to happen. Again, I'm not here to change you guys' mind. I'm just here to give you thought-provoking reasons. That's the reason why I am against the death penalty. Yes, my religion has a little bit to do with it. Being a Christian has a little bit to do with it, but not all of it, as I just shared with you. Yes, I do believe firmly in what the Bible says. I do believe that any murder of any kind is wrong. There's a couple of executioners that has retired, and they became Christians and said that they pray for forgiveness because they realize abundant the eyes of God that they're murderers. But those other reasons are probably my biggest reasons. It's not foolproof. We're killing innocent people all the time. They know of right now of at least 190 people that has been put to death that was put to death wrongly. Texas used to be the murder capital of the world when it came to death row. And I watched a couple of documentaries a few years ago where there was a couple of death row inmates that went and got executed. And then days later, not even 3 days later, evidence rolled in. And this is after that person asked for a stay of execution. They said, nope, we got you. This is it. Going down. 3 days later or less, here comes the family with, here's all the evidence and here's the person that did it right here. But guess what? We can't bring that person back. So until we can make the death penalty 100%, which I don't think that's ever going to be done with the politics that we play. I think it can be, but the prosecution and the judges and the defense attorneys and all of them are going to have to really want to seek the truth before they pull that trigger. Now, I'm not saying everybody on death row is innocent. We know that's not true. We definitely know that's not true. But out of the 20 cases that I'll list here in my show notes, and out of the 190 cases total that they know of today that people's been wrongfully put to death, we got to do something about that if we want the death penalty to stick around and we want it to be something that is successful. All right, guys. Well, I thank you for joining me for that one. I hope that you got something out of this. Drop me a line if you want to discuss this any further. truecrimeandauthors@gmail.com. Let me know why you are for the death penalty or against it. I'm always open to the conversation because I think that once we can come together and talk about these things that we are for or against as a society and as a people, we can make some common ground. So I hope everybody has had a great start to the new year of 2023. I wish you guys all the best in the coming year. Much more success, much more love in your life. Make sure you hug the ones that you care about daily. Also, make sure to check out my sponsors, Cat619 over her Etsy shop. Also, my newest sponsors, Deep Dark Secrets, LaDonna Humphrey and Alecia Lockhart. Those links where you can get a hold of them and see them and get their products will be in the show notes. All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning into this one. I look forward to what we're going to bring you here in the coming year. But as always, remember these things. Always stay humble. A little love and compassion goes a long way. And this is the podcast where two passions becomes one. I'll catch you guys on the next one.
Thank you for listening to True Crime and Authors. Don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. Join us on social media. On Facebook at True Crime and Authors. On Twitter at Authors True. On YouTube and TikTok at True Crime and Authors. And email at truecrimeandauthors@gmail.com. Cover art and logo designed by Dazzling_Ray from Fiverr. Sound mixing and editing by David McClam. Intro script by Sophie Wild from Fiverr. And I'm the voice guy, your imaging guy from Fiverr. See you next time on True Crime and Authors.